The rain hit like bullets against my skin, each drop a small explosion of cold that barely registered anymore. I'd been running for 6 days straight through the Cascade Wilderness, and my body had stopped sending normal pain signals somewhere around day 3. Now everything was just numb, except the wound in my side. That one still screamed. I pressed my palm harder against the gash, feeling warm blood seep between my fingers. The hunters had gotten closer than I'd thought possible. Their silver-tipped crossbow bolt had grazed my ribs before I'd managed to shift and lose them in the river gorge. But I couldn't keep running. Not like this. Through the sheets of rain and the dense Douglas firs, I caught it, a flicker of golden light between the trees. Electric light, not fire. A building. My wolf perked up for the first time in hours, ears forward, hope sparking in our shared consciousness. Shelter. Safety. Alpha. I shook off that last thought. My wolf had been saying crazy things for the past 2 days, probably delirious from blood loss and exhaustion. The structure resolved through the downpour, a modern cabin, all dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows, built into the mountainside like it had grown there. Solar panels gleamed wetly on the roof. Expensive. Isolated. Exactly the kind of place a wealthy alpha would build for privacy. Which meant exactly the kind of place I shouldn't approach. But I was out of options. I stumbled up the stone steps, my boots, stolen from a hunter I'd killed in self-defense 3 days ago, squelching with every step. My hand left a smear of blood on the rail. Before I could second-guess myself, I knocked. The door opened almost immediately, like he'd been standing right there. The man who filled the doorway made my breath catch despite everything. Tall, easily 6'3", with shoulders broad enough to block out the warm light spilling from inside. Dark hair, slightly too long, curled damp against his temples like he'd just come in from the rain himself. Sharp jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes the color of winter ice, pale gray-blue that seemed to see straight through me. Alpha. Every cell in my body recognized it instantly. The power rolling off him was like standing too close to a bonfire, overwhelming, dangerous, magnetic. His scent hit me half a second later. Pine and ozone, like a forest during a lightning storm, with something darker underneath. Leather and gunmetal. My omega hindbrain lit up like a Christmas tree, and I had to physically lock my knees to keep from swaying toward him. Down, I told my wolf firmly. We don't know him. Know him, my wolf insisted, practically wagging its tail. Ours. I lifted my chin, trying for dignity while bleeding all over his porch. Can I sleep here tonight? The words came out rougher than I intended, my throat raw from days of harsh breathing. Just until morning. I won't cause trouble. Those ice-pale eyes swept over me, taking in my soaked clothes plastered to my frame, the blood seeping through my fingers, the desperate exhaustion I couldn't hide. Something shifted in his expression, too quick for me to read. Then he stepped back in one fluid motion. Come in. I crossed the threshold before he could change his mind. Heat from the interior slammed into me like a physical thing, and suddenly my legs decided they were done. I swayed hard. A hand caught my elbow, steadying me. The touch was gentle despite the obvious strength in those fingers. Easy, he said, his voice a low rumble that I felt in my chest. You're safe here. The cabin was stunning. Open concept with exposed beams, a wall of windows overlooking the dark forest, modern kitchen with top-end appliances. But my attention snagged on the fireplace, where actual flames crackled behind glass, throwing dancing light across hardwood floors. The door clicked shut behind me with a soft finality. I turned. He was watching me, arms crossed, firelight painting gold across the sharp planes of his face. Up close I could see the scars, a thin line through his left eyebrow, another along his jaw, the kind you got from claws, not accidents. Fighter, my wolf noted with approval. Sit, he said, gesturing to a leather couch near the fire. You're bleeding on my floor. I managed a short laugh that hurt my ribs. Sorry. I'll clean it. Don't worry about it. He crossed to a cabinet, pulled out a first aid kit that looked military grade, and set it on the coffee table. Let me get you something dry. He disappeared down a hallway before I could argue. I sank onto the couch, my wet jacket squelching, and let my head fall back against the cushions. Just for a second, just to breathe. When he returned, he was carrying soft gray sweatpants and a black thermal shirt. Bathroom's there. He nodded toward a door. Get changed. I'll make coffee. Our fingers brushed as I took the clothes. The contact lasted maybe half a second. Skin against skin, warm against cold. But a shock raced up my arm so sharp I almost gasped. His eyes snapped to mine, pupils dilating. Ice blue swallowed by black for just a moment. Neither of us spoke. I retreated to the bathroom, my heart hammering against my ribs in a way that had nothing to do with blood loss. The bathroom was as modern as the rest of the cabin. Rainfall shower, heated floors, a mirror that took up half the wall. I caught sight of my reflection and winced. I looked like death. 6 days of running had left me gaunt, dark circles under my amber eyes, my black hair matted and tangled. The wound in my side was still seeping sluggishly. I stripped off my soaked clothes and pulled on his. The sweatpants were too long, the shirt hung loose on my frame. Everything smelled like him. That pine and storm scent that made my omega instincts purr with contentment. "Stop it," I told my wolf. "We're leaving in the morning." "No," my wolf said stubbornly. "Staying. Safe. Ours." When I emerged, the alpha was pouring 2 mugs of coffee in the kitchen. He'd changed too, dry jeans and a fitted gray Henley that did nothing to hide the muscle underneath. He set 1 mug on the coffee table in front of the couch, then leaned against the kitchen island, thus giving me space I hadn't asked for, but desperately needed. I sank back onto the couch, wrapped both hands around the mug, and let the heat seep into my frozen palms. The coffee was good, strong, black, grounding. For the first time in almost a week, I wasn't running. The relief was so huge it felt like crying, except I'd forgotten how. The alpha, I still didn't know his name, watched me over the rim of his own mug. "You're a long way from any pack territory." It wasn't quite a question. "Lucky for you, I'm not looking to join one," I said, meeting his gaze without flinching. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth, there and gone. "Even luckier, I'm not looking to recruit." Outside, thunder rolled like a warning. Inside, the fire crackled and his scent wrapped around me like a promise I hadn't earned. I took a slow sip of coffee and let myself pretend, just for one stolen night, that I was safe. I set the mug down before my hands could betray me with a tremble. The coffee was perfect, exactly the right temperature, strong enough to cut through the fog in my head, but it couldn't quiet the drum of my pulse or the way my wolf kept circling restlessly in my chest. The alpha hadn't moved from the kitchen island. He sipped his own coffee slowly, like a man who had all the time in the world, but his eyes never left my face. "You're not going to ask who's after me," I said finally, because the silence was starting to feel like a trap. "I figured you'd tell me when you were ready." His voice was low, measured. "Or when you had to." Smart. Practical. I gave a dry laugh. "What makes you think I'll have to?" "Because whoever put that hole in your side isn't going to stop looking." His gaze dropped to where I was still pressing my hand against my ribs through his thermal shirt. "And because you knocked on a stranger's door in the middle of nowhere instead of going to ground. That means you're either desperate or out of options." "Both," I admitted. Another beat of quiet. The storm battered the windows, but inside the cabin the world had narrowed to the fire's warmth, the scent of coffee and pine, and the steady thrum of his presence across the room. I studied him in return. The scars weren't just on his face. His hands, wrapped around the coffee mug, were marked with old claw marks, deliberate patterns, the kind that came from fights too vicious for even werewolf healing to erase completely. But those hands moved with precision when he set his mug aside, controlled. "You live here alone?" I asked. "Most of the time. No pack?" "No pack." His answer came easily. Most lone alphas carried bitterness like a second skin, anger at whatever had driven them from their family. But this alpha only carried distance, whereas as though solitude wasn't a punishment, but a choice he'd made long ago and never regretted. My wolf whined softly, curious, wanting to get closer. I shoved the feeling down. "I've been running for 6 days straight," I heard myself say. "The hunter's tracking me. They're professionals. They don't get tired. They don't give up. Mercenaries. Worse, they answer to someone who knows exactly what he's hunting." The alpha's gaze sharpened. "And what is that?" I met his eyes. Me. He didn't push. Just waited the way a predator waits for prey to make the next move. I exhaled through my nose. My bloodline carries something old. Something most packs think died out generations ago. I paused, weighing how much to tell this stranger. It's called truth sight. The ability to see through lies, to force truth from people even when they're trying to hide it. It's not something you flaunt. In the wrong hands, it becomes a weapon. In mine, it's just a death sentence. The alpha's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind those winter ice eyes. Recognition. Calculation. Too fast to pin down. "I'm guessing they want it," he said quietly. "They want it gone. Or they want it for themselves. Either way, I'm the last thread to tie off. I didn't tell him the rest. How my entire pack, small, hidden, peaceful, had been slaughtered 2 years ago when someone finally confirmed the rumors. How I'd survived by being forgettable, by suppressing my omega scent with industrial strength blockers, by being too broken to notice until it was too late. The Alpha pushed off the island and crossed to the fireplace. He added another log, sparks snapping upward. "You're safe here tonight." He stated it like fact, calm, certain. My throat tightened. I looked away, toward the wall of windows where rain lashed the glass in silver sheets. "Thank you for not turning me away." "I don't turn away people who knock in the middle of a storm bleeding." A faint smile tugged at my mouth despite everything. "Romantic." "Practical," he corrected, but the corner of his mouth lifted just enough that I knew he was amused. The moment stretched warm and fragile until a distant crack of thunder reminded us both where we were. He straightened. "There's a guest room down the hall. Clean sheets. You take it. I'll stay out here." My pride wanted to argue, but my legs felt like jelly and my ribs screamed with every breath, so I nodded once. "Go before you fall over," he added, not unkindly. I stood slowly, testing my balance. The world tilted slightly, but I managed to stay upright. "What's your name?" I asked, surprising myself. He paused. For a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. "Damon," he said finally. "Silas," I offered in return. Something passed between us in that exchange. Not quite trust, but the beginning of it, the first thread of connection. "Get some rest, Silas," Damon said quietly. "We'll figure out the next step in the morning." The guest room was simple but comfortable. Queen bed with a thick duvet, blackout curtains, a small attached bathroom. I collapsed onto the mattress fully clothed, too exhausted to even pull back the covers. I should have fallen asleep immediately. Instead, my mind raced. The way Damon's fingers had brushed mine when he'd handed me the clothes, the flare of his pupils when our skin touched, the low rumble of his voice that my omega hindbrain kept interpreting as a soothing alpha sound, meant specifically for me. My wolf settled at last, curling into a tight ball inside my chest, but not before sending one last pulse through our bond. Warm, content, big shoulders, strong hands, safe. I closed my eyes and let exhaustion drag me under. I dreamed. But not my usual nightmares of blood and fire and my mother's last scream. This was different, softer. A wide clearing under a full moon, silver light pooling like water. A man stood at the far edge, tall, broad shoulders, face shadowed. When he stepped forward, moonlight caught his eyes. Winter ice, burning pale blue at the edges. He didn't speak, just looked at me the way Damon had looked at me in the living room, like I was the answer to a question he'd stopped asking years ago. I woke with a start, heart hammering. The cabin was quiet except for the dying storm and the faint sound of movement in the main room. I lay still, listening. Damon hadn't gone to sleep. I could feel him through the walls, a low thrum of awareness that matched my own. I pressed my face into the pillow that smelled of cedar and him, and tried not to think about how right it felt to be here. Morning came gray and sudden, pale light filtering through gaps in the blackout curtains. I descended slowly, ribs protesting every movement. Damon was already up in the kitchen, sleeves of his Henley pushed to his elbows, hands dusted with flour. The smell of frying bacon and fresh coffee made my stomach clench with sudden vicious hunger. He glanced over. "Sit." It should have annoyed me, the alpha command in his voice. Instead, my omega instincts responded with a pleased little thrill before I could stop them. I sat at the island while he slid a plate in front of me. Scrambled eggs, crispy bacon, thick slices of sourdough toast. Simple, perfect. I ate without speaking, too hungry for conversation. He ate standing, leaning against the counter, watching the windows more than me. When the plates were clean, he finally spoke. "You're not leaving today." I looked up. "I have to." "That's a bad idea." He set his fork down. "They'll pick up your trail the second the rain stops." "Away, and you're in no shape to outrun them." "I've been outrunning them for 2 years. Not like this." His gaze dropped to where I'd rebandaged the wound this morning with supplies from the guest bathroom. Not bleeding, not half-starved, not alone. That last word landed heavier than he probably intended. I swallowed. "I'm used to being alone. So was I," Damon said quietly. "Doesn't mean it's smart." I wanted to argue, to draw a boundary between us before whatever this was became something I couldn't walk away from. Instead, I heard myself ask, "Why are you helping me?" Damon looked away toward the windows where weak morning light filtered through the pines. "Because the last time someone showed up here bleeding and desperate, I turned them away. They didn't make it through the night. The admission was quiet, raw. It clearly cost him something to say it. I felt my walls crack a little. "Dick, one more day," I said. "Then I go." He didn't argue, just gave a short nod and stood. "I'm going to check the perimeter. Stay inside." He shrugged into a waterproof jacket and stepped out, the door closing softly behind him. I sat alone in the sudden quiet, fingers tracing the edge of the plate. "Safe," my wolf whispered again. "Here. Ours." I pressed my palm to my chest like I could push the feeling away, but it didn't budge. Hours passed. Now I cleaned my wound properly with the first aid supplies Damon had left on the bathroom counter, applied fresh gauze, then paced the cabin. Books on a high shelf, wilderness survival, pack law, something called Modern Wolf Politics, with a worn spine, a carved wooden wolf on the mantel, exquisitely detailed, one paw raised as if scenting the wind, framed photos on the wall, but they'd all been turned face down. I was examining the bookshelf when the first howl split the afternoon air. It sounded close, too close. I froze. Another answered, then 3 more. A hunting circle, tightening. I moved to the window. Through the dripping branches I caught flashes of gray and brown fur, low to the ground, circling the cabin in a deliberate pattern. My heart slammed against my ribs. The door banged open. Damon stepped inside, jacket dripping, eyes blazing molten gold. He'd already partially shifted, claws tipping his fingers, canines lengthened, the wolf riding just beneath his skin. "They found us," he said, voice roughened by the half-shift. I reached instinctively for the knife I'd stolen from the hunter, small but sharp. "How many?" 6, maybe 7. I swallowed. "They're here for me. I know." He crossed the room in 2 strides, took my face between his hands, gentle despite the claws. His thumbs brushed my cheekbones once, twice. "Stay behind me," he said, alpha command threading through every word. "No heroics. Damon, stay, behind, me." His voice dropped to a growl that vibrated through my bones, and my omega hindbrain went liquid with submission before I could stop it. Then he turned, shoved the door wide, and stepped into the rain. The shift took him mid-stride. One moment man, broad, scarred, human. The next, massive wolf. He was enormous, easily the size of a small bear, with fur so dark it looked black except where silver-white frosted his ruff and spine like winter had touched him, eyes burning molten gold. Bigger than any wolf I'd ever seen, shoulders rolling with muscle that spoke of power barely contained. The air pressure changed. I felt it in my teeth and the sudden ache of my own wolf rising to meet his. The hunters froze mid-stride, hackles up, instinctive terror flashing in their eyes. They lunged anyway. Damon met them like a storm breaking. He moved with lethal, liquid grace. His jaws closed on the lead hunter's throat, mid-leap, clean, brutal. Blood sprayed across wet grass. The wolf dropped without a sound. The second came from the left, claws raking for Damon's flank. He twisted and drove his shoulder into the attacker's chest. The wolf flew backwards, slamming into a pine with a wet crunch that splintered bark. 3 more piled on at once. Damon roared, a sound that vibrated through my chest and made my knees buckle. He reared, a massive pause sweeping in a blur. One hunter's spine snapped under the blow. Another lost half its muzzle in a single swipe. But the last one, the smartest one, didn't go for Damon. It broke left, low and silent, eyes locked on me in the doorway. Damon saw it. He pivoted mid-fight, exposing his side for a heartbeat. The flanking wolf seized the opening, teeth sinking into the meat of Damon's shoulder, ripping through fur and muscle in a shallow, tearing bite. Damon didn't flinch. He simply reached back with one massive paw, hooked claws into the attacker's scruff, and yanked. The wolf came off him in a spray of blood, Damon's blood, and he flung it sideways into the others like a discarded rag. The pack scattered, the survivors limping into the trees with panicked yips. Silence fell, broken only by rain and Damon's heaving breaths. He stood there, huge, dark fur matted crimson along one shoulder. Then he shifted back in a single shuddering ripple. Naked, our rain streaming over the fresh wound, he turned to face me. The gash wasn't deep. It wouldn't kill him. But it was there because he'd chosen to take it instead of letting one fang reach me. My knife clattered to the floor. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't look away from the man who'd just dismantled 6 trained killers in under 30 seconds. Damon crossed the muddy threshold. Slow. Deliberate. Rain washed the blood from his skin in pink rivers. He stopped inches from me. close enough that I could feel the furnace heat rolling off him, smell the sharp electric scent of his wolf still riding high. "They were looking for you," he said, voice rough from the shift. "They said truth sight." My pulse thundered in my ears. I lifted a trembling hand and touched the edge of the wound on his shoulder. Warm blood coated my fingertips. "You didn't have to—" "I did." His winter ice eyes flecked with gold locked on mine. "You're under my roof. Oh, well, that makes you mine to protect." The possessive claim in his voice sent heat flooding through me. "Now tell me what's really going on, Silas." I shook my head. "I told you. Old bloodline. They want it gone. That's not all of it." He reached out slowly and brushed a wet strand of hair from my face. His fingers lingered. "They came to my door. They died on my ground. This is mine now." My breath caught. My wolf howled inside me, joyful, desperate, certain. "Mine. Ours. A pack. You can't leave yet," he said quietly. "Not until I understand the threat. Not until I know what I'm fighting." I searched his face. Fierce. Unguarded. Something raw flickering behind the ice. "And after?" I whispered. His thumb traced my lower lip. "We'll see." Thunder rumbled again, distant now. I closed my eyes for one heartbeat. Then I nodded. One more day became two. Became a promise neither of us had expected. And somewhere beyond these mountains, the man who'd ordered my death tightened his grip on the Pack Council, sensing that the Alpha he thought long dead had just found the one thing more dangerous than political power, the Omega, who could expose every lie. The days blurred into a fragile rhythm that felt both temporary and permanent in equal measure. I kept telling myself this was just a stopover, a brief respite before I disappeared again. But every morning I woke to his scent on the blankets, Pine and Storm and Alpha, and felt my wolf settle contentedly. Every evening I found myself lingering by the fire instead of planning my escape route, watching the way firelight painted gold across Damon's sharp features while he read. Damon tended my wound twice a day with hands that could crush bone but moved like they were handling glass. The ritual became something I looked forward to, something that anchored my days. He never lingered longer than necessary, never let his fingers trail, but the air between us thickened each time, charged, humming with unspoken want. When he pressed fresh gauze to my side, I felt the heat of his palm through the bandage, burning like a brand. When he tied the knot, his knuckles brushed the underside of my ribs, skin against skin for the briefest moment, accidental touches that felt deliberate in their devastation. I caught my breath every time. He never commented on my reactions, but his pupils flared gold for a heartbeat before he looked away, jaw tight with restraint. On the fourth day I woke to find him already in the kitchen, shirtless and just sleep pants, coffee brewing while he chopped vegetables for breakfast. The scars on his back were more extensive than I'd realized. Old claw marks that had healed silver white against tanned skin, creating patterns like constellations. "See something you like?" he asked without turning around, amusement threading his voice. I flushed, caught staring. "Just wondering what kind of fight leaves marks like that." "The kind where you win, but barely." He glanced over his shoulder, winter ice eyes finding mine. "Council enforcement action gone wrong. 3 years ago, before everything fell apart." "You miss it," I said. Not a question. His hand stilled on the knife. Sometimes. The work, at least. Knowing I was making things better. Safer. The politics. He shook his head. "That I don't miss." We ate together at the island, shoulders almost touching, the silence comfortable now instead of tense. Simple meals that Damon prepared with surprising skill. Venison he'd hunted himself. Roasted vegetables from a garden I hadn't noticed behind the cabin. Bread from a local bakery in the small town an hour's drive away. "You're a good cook," I observed, watching him plate the food with care. Had to learn. 3 years alone up here, my options were learn or survive on protein bars. He slid a plate in front of me. I chose to actually live. Conversation stayed light at first, those early days. Safe topics. The weather patterns in the Cascades. The best trails for running in wolf form. Which suppressants worked best for Omegas, who needed to stay undetected for extended periods. He knew more about Omega biology than most Alphas bothered to learn. Didn't treat my questions like weaknesses. But the nights were different. By the fire, when the wind howled outside and the cabin felt like the only place left in the world, the words came heavier, more intimate. The walls we'd both built started developing cracks. One evening, I asked about the photos he kept face down on the wall. I'd been curious since the first night, but hadn't wanted to pry. Damon was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. Then he stood, walked to the wall, and turned one frame right side up. The photo showed a group of wolves, maybe 20 of them, standing on the steps of an impressive building. Glass and steel, modern architecture. Council hall, I realized. And there in the center was a younger Damon, clean-shaven, wearing a formal suit, flanked by other alphas who looked at him with clear respect. "My pack," he said quietly, still facing the wall. "The council enforcement team," before everything fell apart. I stood and moved closer. I'm studying the faces. "They look loyal?" They were. His voice roughened. Most of them, anyway. When the frame job happened, when the evidence came out, some believed me. 7, actually. The ones who came when I called tonight. He paused. The rest? I don't blame them. The case against me was perfect. Too perfect. If I'd been on the outside looking in, I probably would have believed it too. He turned another frame. This one showed Damon with an older alpha, both in formal wear, both smiling. "My father," Damon said. "Richard Frost. Alpha Prime before me. He was everything I tried to be. Fair, strong, uncompromising on justice, but always willing to listen." His jaw tightened. Marcus was his second, his most trusted advisor, and his secret son, apparently. I stepped closer, drawn by the raw grief in his voice. "You didn't know?" "No." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "And I'm still not sure I believe it. Marcus was always ambitious, always hungry for recognition. This could just be another lie, another manipulation. My truth site could tell you," I offered quietly. "If you wanted to know." Damon turned to look at me. "Would it change anything? Would it for you?" He considered that. "No," he said finally. "Even if we shared blood, what he did, the massacre, the frame job, hunting your people, that's unforgivable. Biology doesn't excuse that." I nodded, understanding settling in my chest. "Then it doesn't matter." His hand lifted, fingers ghosting along my jaw in a touch so gentle it made my breath catch. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not pushing. For understanding that some truths don't matter as much as the choices we make with them." The moment hung between us, charged and fragile, until my wolf stirred hopefully, and I had to step back before I did something reckless. On the 6th day, Damon taught me to shoot. "If you're going to survive out there," he said, setting up targets in the clearing behind the cabin, "you need more than claws and speed. You need distance weapons." The rifle felt foreign in my hands, heavy and cold. I'd always relied on stealth and my Omega ability to blend, to disappear. Direct confrontation wasn't my strength. "Here." Damon moved behind me, his chest against my back, arms coming around to adjust my grip on the weapon. His breath was warm against my ear. "Feet shoulder width apart. Stock tight against your shoulder. Breathe out when you squeeze the trigger." I could barely focus on his instructions with his body pressed against mine like this, his scent surrounding me, his heat seeping through my clothes. "Try it," he murmured. I squeezed the trigger. The recoil jolted through me, but Damon's solid presence kept me steady. The shot went wide, missing the target completely. "Again," he said. "You're tensing up. Inner relax." How was I supposed to relax when every nerve ending was hyper-aware of where his body touched mine? We practiced for an hour. My accuracy improved marginally, but mostly I just learned what it felt like to be held by him, supported by him, to have his patience extended without judgment. When we finally stopped, my shoulder ached from the recoil and my hands trembled slightly. Damon noticed immediately. "Ice," he said, leading me back inside. "And ibuprofen." He made me sit while he retrieved supplies, then knelt in front of me, gently rotating my shoulder to check the range of motion. "You'll be sore tomorrow," he said, "but you did well. I missed more than I hit. You've never shot before. The fact that you hit the target at all is impressive." His hand stilled on my shoulder, thumbs pressing into the muscle with perfect pressure. "You're stronger than you think." "Silas." I looked down at him. This powerful alpha kneeling before me, tending to me, looking at me like I was something precious, and felt something crack open in my chest. "Damon," I whispered. His eyes lifted to mine, winter ice melting to show the heat underneath. For one suspended heartbeat, I thought he might kiss me. Then his phone buzzed with an alert, shattering the moment. He pulled back, checking the screen, his expression darkening. "What is it?" "Security perimeter breach. East side." He was already moving, grabbing his jacket. "Stay inside. Lock the doors." "Damon!" But he was already gone, shifting mid-stride as he hit the tree line. I paced the cabin for 20 agonizing minutes before he returned, human again, carrying something in his arms. A wolf pup. Maybe 6 months old, gray fur matted with blood, whimpering softly. "Found her caught in one of the traps meant for you," Damon said grimly, laying the pup gently on the couch. "But she's not one of Marcus's hunters, just a young wolf who wandered into the wrong territory." We worked together to treat her wounds, Damon holding her still while I cleaned and bandaged. The pup settled under my touch, my Omega instincts apparently soothing even in her pain. "You're good with her," Damon observed. "Omegas are natural caregivers," I said, focusing on wrapping the pup's leg. "It's biology." "It's more than that." His hand covered mine briefly. "It's compassion." "Then that's not biology. That's choice." The pup fell asleep between us, exhausted from pain and fear. We sat on either side of her, hands occasionally brushing as we monitored her breathing. "We can't keep her," I said quietly. "It's not safe." "I know." Damon's jaw tightened. "But we can't send her back out there either, not until we deal with Marcus. So we're stuck in a holding pattern, waiting for them to make the next move." "No." He looked at me across the sleeping pup. "We're planning our own move. Together." That night we made plans. Real plans. Not about running or hiding, but about fighting back. Damon laid out what he knew about Marcus's operation, the council members who'd supported the frame job, the evidence that had been fabricated. I shared everything I remembered about the night my pack died, details I'd suppressed for years suddenly coming into sharp focus. The pieces started connecting. Marcus hadn't just framed Damon. He'd orchestrated the Redwood Massacre to create chaos, to weaken the council, to position himself as the solution. And eliminating the Truthsight bloodline was part of that, removing the one power that could expose his lies. "He won't stop," I said. "Even if we run to the other side of the country, he'll keep hunting me." "Then we don't run." Damon's eyes glowed gold in the firelight. "We end this." The next morning the pup was stronger, strong enough to shift back to human form, a girl, and maybe 15, with frightened eyes and Marcus's scent still clinging to her clothes. "He has my pack," she whispered when Damon questioned her gently. "My parents, my siblings. He said if I didn't track the Omega, he'd kill them all." My blood ran cold. "Where are they?" Damon asked. "The old council detention center, 20 miles north." She looked at me with desperate eyes. "Please, I didn't want to hurt you, I just wanted my family back." Damon and I exchanged a look. "Oh, we'll get them out," I promised her. "All of them." Her eyes widened with fragile hope. It was time to stop hiding. It was time to fight back. 2 nights later, while Damon was out checking security, my fingers brushed a hidden drawer in his desk. Curiosity tugged at me. I pulled it open. Inside lay old files, digital drives, printed emails. I picked up one, a report dated 3 years ago, marked Confidential. Surviving Truthsight descendants confirmed in Cascade territory. Recommend observation only. Do not engage. Risk assessment pending. It was dated 2 months before my pack burned. Damon had known. He'd known there were survivors. Known we were being hunted. And he'd done nothing. The betrayal sliced between my ribs like a silver blade, stealing my breath. I stood frozen, paper trembling in my hands, the cabin suddenly too small, the walls too close. When the door opened and Damon stepped in, boots caked with mud, shoulders tense from patrol, he froze the moment he saw my face, the file in my hand, the look in my eyes. "You knew," I said, trying to control the hurt roaring inside me. "Silas, you knew there were survivors." I held up the report like evidence in a trial. "You knew they were being hunted, and you let it happen." His face drained of color, the gold in his eyes flickering out. "I was trying to protect... Protect who? Your position? Your reputation?" My voice cracked. "Because it sure as hell wasn't us." He took a step forward. I backed away, wounded. "I was broken, Silas." His words came out rough, almost pleading. Guilt. Rage. I couldn't face what I'd become if I went back. I thought if I stayed hidden, maybe they'd stop looking. "They didn't stop," I whispered. Tears burned my lashes, but I refused to let them fall. They killed everyone I loved. Every last one. Silence stretched between us. Sharp. Painful. Then Damon's voice. Raw and wrecked. "I know." I shook my head in disbelief. "I thought you were different." "I am." "You're not, Damon." I grabbed my bag from the couch, fingers numb. "You're just another alpha who watches from the shadows while the world burns." Silas, wait! I shoved past him, shoulder brushing his chest. I'm leaving. I'll draw the danger away. Finish what you started alone. He caught my wrist. Gentle, desperate. I spun, my truth sight power flaring in my palms, warning silver white, bright enough to cast shadows across his devastated face. Let go of me. His hand dropped instantly, falling to his side like dead weight. His eyes, those winter ice eyes I'd learned to trust, were shattered. I walked into the night. The forest swallowed me quickly, dark pines closing around me like a shroud. But I didn't get far. Marcus's men were waiting. They moved like ghosts. A chloroform-soaked cloth clamped over my mouth before I could scream. Silver chains snapping around my wrists with biting cold. A rough hood yanked over my head. I fought, clawed, kicked, light sputtering weakly in my palms. But the drug was fast, darkness rushing in like black water. When I woke, I was in a concrete cell deep in some facility, wrists shackled high against the damp wall, silver burning my skin. Marcus Calloway stood in the doorway, tall, elegant in an expensive suit, a cruel smile curling across his lips. "Hello? The little truth sight," he said, stepping closer. "I've waited a long time for you." I lifted my chin, defiance burning through the fear. "You won't get what you want." Marcus laughed, soft, amused. "Oh, I think I will." He leaned in, breath hot against my ear. "Because your alpha is coming, and when he does he'll have to choose, his freedom or you." My heart sank, heavy and certain, because I knew Damon. He was tearing through the forest right now, eyes blazing gold, heart bleeding. He was ready to burn the world down to reach me. And I knew Marcus would make him bleed for it. Damon tore through the Cascade wilderness like a storm unleashed. Branches whipped his face. Roots snagged at his boots. But nothing slowed him. The scent of silver and fear lingered on the wind, mixed with Silas's blood. Faint but unmistakable. It fueled the fire in his veins, turning grief to rage, fear to fury. Behind him moved 7 wolves who'd answered his call without question. Shadows in the night. Pack members who'd never believed Marcus's lies, who'd been waiting 3 years for their Alpha Prime to return. Now they ran as one. Silent. Deadly. The facility loomed ahead, an old council detention center Marcus had repurposed. Concrete walls, reinforced doors, guards patrolling with silver-loaded weapons. Damon shifted back mid-stride, the change ripping through him in a wave of pain and power. He stood naked in the cold, skin prickling, breath fogging the air. He raised one fist. The pack fanned out, taking positions. Then he walked to the gate alone. His footsteps crunched on gravel, deliberate. The guards spotted him immediately. Shouts echoed, weapons raised. "Marcus Calloway!" Damon's voice boomed. Alpha command woven into every syllable. "I've come for what's mine." The gates groaned open slowly. An invitation. Marcus wanted this. Wanted to see him break. Damon stepped through. The courtyard was ringed with lights, harsh and blinding. The mercenaries lined the walls, 24 strong, eyes hard, weapons gleaming. In the center stood Marcus, dark suit immaculate, cruel smile in place. Behind him, chained to a metal post, was Silas. Damon's world narrowed to him. Silas's wrists were shackled overhead, silver links biting into skin already raw and blistered. His shirt was torn, ribs exposed where wounds had reopened. Fresh bruises bloomed across his cheekbone, lips split, but his chin was lifted. The amber eyes blazing with defiance. When he saw Damon, his expression fractured, relief crashing into fury. "Damon," he whispered. Marcus laughed. "Right on time, brother." The word slammed into Damon like a physical blow. He froze. "Didn't you ever wonder," Marcus said, spreading his arms wide, "why I was always so close to the Alpha Prime? Why your father kept me at his right hand?" He smiled. "I wasn't just loyal. I was blood. Born of an affair he couldn't resist. Raised in the shadows. Acknowledged as second to keep me leashed, but never as son, never as heir." Damon's mind reeled. Memories flashing, shared missions. Marcus's quiet ambition. "You're lying." "Test it." Marcus's smile sharpened. "Have your pet shine his light, but you won't, because deep down you know it's true." "Don't listen to him, Damon." Silas strained forward against his chains. "He's twisting everything." Marcus backhanded him. Casual. Vicious. Silas's head snapped sideways. Fresh blood bloomed on his lip. The sight snapped something primal in Damon. He exploded forward, shifting mid-lunge, body elongating, fur erupting, claws unsheathing in a symphony of rage. He hit the first mercenary like a battering ram, jaws closing on throat, blood hot on his tongue. Chaos erupted. Wolves crashed against wolves in a storm of fur and fang. Blood slicked the concrete. Damon fought like a demon. Every strike visceral, every kill a release of fury. Marcus shifted too, sleek gray wolf, leaner but faster. They collided in the center, bodies slamming with impact that jarred bones. They rolled, snarling, biting, brother against brother in a tangle of betrayal and blood. Damon pinned Marcus, jaws at his throat. Marcus's eyes met his, defiant, not a shred of remorse. "You won't kill me," Marcus rasped, voice shifting human. "You're still too noble, too weak." Damon hesitated, one fatal heartbeat. Marcus twisted free, lunging, not at Damon, but at Silas. Time slowed. Damon roared, throwing himself between them. Marcus's claws raked across Damon's chest. Deep, vicious, carving furrows from shoulder to hip. Pain exploded, white-hot, blinding. Damon staggered but didn't fall. Silas screamed his name. The truth sight power surged. Not a dome this time, but a tidal wave of silver-white light that erupted from Silas's core, slamming outward in all directions. The wave crashed over every wolf in the courtyard. Mercenaries dropped. Loyalists froze. Marcus staggered back with a howl. Where the light touched, truth burned free. Mercenaries fell to their knees, voices spilling confessions. "I took Marcus's money to frame the Alpha Prime. I planted the evidence. I lied under oath." Marcus reeled hardest, the light searing him, forcing him human. He collapsed to one knee, eyes wide with horror as his own truths poured out. "I did it. Orchestrated the massacre. Framed Damon. Paid off the witnesses. And killed the truth sight packs to hide the evidence. I wanted the power. Wanted him to suffer like I did." The words echoed off the walls. Damon shifted back, blood streaming from his chest, soaking his skin. He staggered toward Silas. His claws snapped the chains like brittle twigs. Silas collapsed into his arms, trembling but alive. "You're hurt," Silas whispered, voice breaking. "I'll heal." Damon cupped his face. "You're safe. That's all that matters." Marcus knelt in the center, surrounded by his broken forces. The confessions had gutted him. Damon turned to him. "You were my brother, and you murdered innocents for a position built on lies." Marcus looked up, eyes hollow. "It should have been mine." "It was never about blood," Damon said quietly. "It was about choice, and you chose wrong." He glanced at his pack. "Bind him. He faces council justice." Marcus laughed, broken, as chains snapped around his wrists. The facility fell silent. Dawn was breaking, the cold gold light spilling over the mountains. Damon took one step toward the exit, when Marcus's laugh cut through again, sharper, unhinged. "You think this ends with chains?" Damon froze. Marcus twisted violently. The chains didn't break. They didn't need to. He slammed his shoulder into the nearest guard, snatched the knife from the man's belt. He spun straight for Silas. Damon threw himself forward, intercepting the strike. The blade sank into his side, deep, twisting. Fresh blood bloomed hot and fast. Damon's vision tunneled, but he didn't fall. He caught Marcus's wrist in an iron grip, wrenching the blade free. Marcus clawed at his face. Damon's other hand shot out, claws extended and closed around Marcus's throat. For one suspended heartbeat, they stood locked together. "You always were too soft," Marcus choked out. "That's why you'll lose everything." "You're wrong." Damon's voice came low, broken. "That's why I'll protect everything." He twisted. The crack of Marcus's neck echoed like dry wood snapping. Marcus's body went limp, eyes rolling back. Damon released him. Marcus crumpled, finally silent. Silas's hands flew to Damon's side, pressing hard against the new wound. "Damon!" He swayed but caught himself on Silas's shoulder. "It's over." Silas nodded, tears tracking through blood and dirt. The pack moved in quietly, respectful. Dawn strengthened, gold turning to rose. The facility was theirs. Word flew fast. The Alpha Prime lived. The traitor confessed. The truth sight had returned. They rode into Seattle, Pack Council headquarters at sunset. Damon on a motorcycle, Silas beside him on a second bike, his jacket draped over Silas's shoulders like a vow. The streets swelled with wolves. Crowds parting, murmurs rising to howls. At Council Hall, the remaining members waited. Elderly faces pale, some kneeling as Damon dismounted. He helped Silas down, kept his hand in his. warm, steady. "I return not as the fugitive you branded," Damon declared, voice carrying alpha power threading every word, "but as your alpha prime cleared by truth itself." He recounted the confessions, the truth sight's light, Marcus's fall. The crowd roared approval. "And this," Damon lifted their joined hands, "is my mate, Silas Hart, last of the truth sight line, my equal, my heart." Silence fell. Then howls erupted, thunderous, unified, the packs accepted. That night, in Damon's penthouse overlooking Puget Sound, they held the private ceremony. No crowds, no spectacle, just them, the full moon visible through floor-to-ceiling windows, and a pack elder who remembered the ancient rites. They stood barefoot on the balcony, hands clasped, vows in the old tongue, promises of protection, loyalty, love eternal. When the claiming came, Damon cupped Silas's face gently. "Are you sure?" His voice was rough, eyes soft. "I've never been more sure." Damon kissed him first, slow, deep, tasting of forever. Then he tilted Silas's head, lips brushing the junction of neck and shoulder. His teeth sank in. Gentle pressure building to firm, marking Silas as his. The mate bond flared, bright, unbreakable. Silas felt Damon's scars, his grief, his unyielding love. Damon felt Silas's light, his strength, his unwavering heart. Silas bit him in return, completing the circle. They stood wrapped in each other as the moon watched. Silas's first heat came 3 weeks after the bonding, swift and overwhelming in a way his suppressed biology had never allowed before. Damon cared for him through it with a tenderness that made Silas's heart ache, protective, attentive, meeting every need until the fever broke. Their daughter was conceived in those days, though they wouldn't know it for certain until weeks later when Silas's scent began to change, carrying the sweet note of new life. 5 years later, on a crisp autumn morning when the leaves turned gold and the air smelled of pine and wood smoke, Damon had a surprise. He appeared in the nursery doorway with a small backpack slung over one shoulder and Rowan already perched on his hip, their 4-year-old's black curls wild from sleep, amber eyes bright with excitement. "We're going on an adventure," Damon announced conspiratorially. Silas looked up from folding tiny blankets. One brow arched. "An adventure that doesn't involve council meetings." Damon's mouth curved. "Exactly the opposite." Rowan bounced in his father's arms. "Cabin. Papa said we're going to the first place." Silas's heart did a soft, familiar flip. He met Damon's gaze, steady winter ice eyes that still softened every time they landed on him. Damon nodded. Thought Rowan should see where it all started. Where his papa knocked on a door in the rain and changed everything. Silas crossed the room, rose on his toes, and kissed him. Slow. Grateful. "You sentimental wolf. Only for you too," Damon murmured against his lips. They traveled light. 1 SUV, minimal supplies. No security detail. Just them. The journey to the Cascades took 4 hours of easy driving through forests that had once felt like hiding places and now felt like home. Rowan chattered nonstop about shifting, about wanting to be as big as Papa someday, about the butterflies he'd seen yesterday. When they crested the final ridge and the cabin came into view, same dark wood, same solar panels, same stone chimney curling lazy smoke, Silas felt his throat tighten. Rowan scrambled out before the car even stopped, shifting mid-jump into a small black pup with amber eyes, tail wagging furiously. He bounded up the stone steps and nosed the door open with eager whines. Damon dismounted, helped Silas down. He then kept his hand in his as they followed. Inside, nothing had changed. The hearth still crackled with fresh logs Damon had lit ahead of time. The carved wooden wolf sat on the mantel. The guest room door stood open, the bed neatly made. Rowan shifted back, giggling, and ran straight to the spot by the fire where Silas had once sat bleeding and exhausted. "This is where Papa was?" he asked, eyes wide. Damon crouched beside him, voice soft. "This is where Papa asked to stay one night." "Just one?" Rowan looked between them. "Just one," Silas confirmed, kneeling too. "And your father said yes." "Did you know right away?" Rowan asked seriously. "That he was yours?" Damon reached out, brushing a curl from Rowan's forehead, then resting his palm against Silas's cheek. "I knew the second he knocked," he said quietly. "My wolf did anyway. Took the rest of me a little longer to catch up." Rowan beamed. "I'm glad you let him in. Dad." Damon's throat worked. "Me too, Rowan." That afternoon, Rowan chased leaves outside until his cheeks were pink. Silas taught him how to stack kindling. Damon watched them both with that soft, unguarded look he saved only for these moments. At dusk, they sat together on the cabin's porch. Rowan curled in Silas's lap, Damon's arm around them both. The sky turned lavender and gold. Rowan yawned, eyelids drooping. "Can we come back every year?" Silas kissed the top of his head. "Every year." Damon pressed his lips to Silas's temple. "And maybe," he murmured against his skin, "one day we'll tell your sister the same story." Rowan sighed, already half asleep. "I like that story." Silas leaned into Damon's side, hand resting over the gentle curve of his belly where their daughter kicked softly in answer. "So do I," he whispered. The cabin glowed behind them, warm and waiting, exactly as it had been on the night everything began, and this time, they weren't running toward safety. They were already home. Thank you for being part of this journey. If this story moved you, subscribe for more tales of unexpected mates, dangerous truths, and love that builds in the spaces between fear and trust. Until next time, be brave, be bold, be loved, always.